Hey y'all, thanks for coming back to the Skookum Report. Today's encounter comes from Three Sisters, Oregon in North Mathau Lake. This gentleman wants to remain anonymous, and that's cool. And he writes, early in the summer of 1970, I quit my first engineering job at Lockheed in Georgia, and I threw a bunch of stuff in an old station wagon, and I headed west for an extensive backpacking vacation. Within a year, I ended up in Arizona and resumed a regular life, but I had one remarkable experience in early August of 1970, and I'm going to share that with you now. I was driving through Central Oregon and decided to spend a few days backpacking in the Three Sisters wilderness area. I parked at a trailhead on the north side of the area and hiked in several miles in the early afternoon to North Mathau Lake. This is a very picturesque lake in old-growth forest, and it's situated along many acres of large piles of volcanic rock. Now, being early, I decided to hike to the next small lake, which is South Mathau, but it was much more of a barren landscape, so I decided to hike back to North Mathau and set up camp there. I was camped on the northeast corner of the lake, near the main trail about 30 feet from the water. That evening, as I prepared and I ate dinner, I had the strangest feeling of being watched. I kept looking over my shoulder, but I never saw anything. Now, I'm an experienced outdoorsman and a hunter, so I eventually dismissed these strange feelings as meaningless. I knew I was the lone camper on this quarter-mile-long lake. Now, around dark, a windy front came through, so I crawled into my tent and zipped it up and went to sleep. At exactly 4 a.m., I carried a little clock with dials that glowed in the dark. I woke up suddenly. The front had passed, and there was only mountain quiet. And just seconds later, I heard scrunch, scrunch, scrunch. 3 footsteps coming toward my tent from near the lake. It was like the sound made when walking on about a half-inch of dry snow. The ground was compacted soil and some pine duff, and the walking sounds continued around the back of my tent, stopped near, and then went down in the lake direction. The steps were obviously bipedal, and it didn't make sense why a person would be in my campsite after dark. And I had called out, "Who's there?" but I didn't get any answer. And at one point, one of my tie ropes to my tent was lightly touched. For a couple of minutes, the steps continued. And making a final check that this was not a person, and having heard some about Bigfoot, I called out again, "I have a gun and I'm coming out." I did have a .22 pistol that I carried, but I had no intention of coming out or using it. Again, I got no response. I noticed the sound of my own anxious breathing, and admit to being scared. For whatever reason, I got my shirt and pulled out the little compass matchbox whistle I always carried, and I blew on the whistle, and the step sounds immediately carried off towards the north side of the lake and away. I was relieved, but still quite incredulous. Now, in the morning light, I got up and did a thorough check for prints. The best I found was a couple of feet from the head of my tent. It was a right print with toe outlines showing, pointing towards the lake, and was 4 inches or so longer than my size 8.5 boot. It was also a couple of inches wider. The amazing thing is that it was maybe 1/4 of an inch deep into the ground, and I couldn't leave a mark with my own lug-soled boots. It was immediately obvious that it would be very hard to fake the considerable implied weight. I also found 3 fainter prints on the small trail near the lake and a short distance from my tent. However, I did find one deep but ragged imprint in the soft soil between the main and small trail, where something had stepped down from the upper trail to the lower one that was several feet below. All of this was within 50 yards of my tent. Now, I never smelled anything or heard any other sounds, but I do know that a curious something several times my weight and bipedal visited me and was not in the least worried about me. Now, a funny thing was it didn't touch my backpack or food. I was spooked and cut short my backpack itinerary. A couple of years later, I went back to the same spot, more knowledgeable, this time hoping for a visit. Days of diligent exploring produced nothing. However, needless to say, in the years that have ensued, I have become a very interested observer of the Bigfoot mystery. My experience adds little to the mix, but I will definitely never forget it. That was a great encounter story. Another guy camping by himself had something happen on night 1. I would have left on morning 2, I guarantee you that. But they stick it out. They're braver than me. I don't want to mess with a Bigfoot. If you or anybody you know has seen a Bigfoot or had an encounter and you'd like to share it, just shoot me an email at skookumreport@gmail.com. That's skookumreport@gmail.com. And I'll be sure to get it up on the channel for you. It's no problem at all. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button and leave a comment and say hi. I really enjoy talking with you guys. Meeting a lot of interesting people doing this and having a lot of fun doing it also. So until the next Skookum Report, which will probably be tomorrow, you guys take care and God bless, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.